Now we bring on Dr. Boz. Dr. Boz, here's a photo of me and the beautiful Dr. Boz from Keto Orlando Summit last year in Orlando. We got to hang out together. We shared the stage together. It was such an honor to share the stage with somebody who's been a thought leader in the health and wellness space, not just keto. She's much more than keto. She understands cellular health. And we took this photo together after we both spoke on stage. Dr. Boz is an internal medicine doctor, author, mother, wife, teacher, a brilliant storyteller. She was born into a farming family in South Dakota, a small little town. Now she lives in Florida like me, inheriting hard work and the expectations that things are teachable. Throughout her medical training and career, she applied her inheritance to teach patients through storytelling and practical application of medical jargon, which you're going to see how brilliant she is at teaching. So without further ado, here's the wonderful, the beautiful, the intelligent Dr. Boz. Hey, Dr. Boz.
Oh, thank you for that, Ben. It's so nice to be part of this. Actually, we need more of Ben Azadis throughout the universe. So
we need more Ben and Boz.
Ben and Boz, right? Yeah, that should be our future podcast.
So thank you for being here. I know a lot of our students are very excited about this session. They've been following you on your YouTube channel. They have your books. I forgot to mention, by the way, let me just make a quick note. Dr. Boz has these two books. They're incredible any way you can. And Keto Continuum. We're going to drop a link for both of them right now for you to get her book. So I just wanted to mention that before I forget. Thank you for being here, fellow Floridian. Now you live in Florida, just like me. Here's where I want to start the conversation, Dr. Boz. You know, sugar and glucose and insulin. We know that most Americans, it's estimated that 88% of American adults are metabolically unhealthy. It's probably higher than that because that study was done before COVID, that University of North Carolina Chapel Hill study. But what do high levels of glucose and insulin do to the body? What does it do to increase our risk of cardiovascular disease? What does it do to the brain? What kind of hits are we taking when we have these high levels of glucose and insulin?
Well, you're feeding me the cream. This is my favorite topic. So yes, great question. Well played. Yeah, you look at the teaching of how to comprehensively explain how much damage is done with a chronically elevated blood sugar. And it is a task that I continue to retry. What's the best tagline to really get people's attention? My favorite has been a lecture that I'm going to give a little bit of on Thursday. Oh, that's tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow at Low Carb, where we talk about addiction. And in the world of addiction, you know, I repair broken brains for a living. And so I have these SPECT scans that I probably can show on a slide here if we have the time or capacity, because the power of what the image shows, I think, is, to me, the best way that summarizes what's really going on. What's the price you're paying when you keep hitting a higher and higher and higher blood sugar? That the time spent with excess blood sugar in circulation is area under the curve for those chemists or scientists that like to use that imagery, that it is truly that time where the blood sugar starts to rise, how high it stays, and then how long it takes to get the blood sugar back down, and then what is back down in your body. And we know that when that blood sugar gets north of 100, and specifically north of that 130, the blood sugar that's found inside your circulatory system is a minor fraction of your excess. It's just the part that's moving from one part of the body to the next. It is not counting the years of storage you've got in your liver, the years of storage you've got in your muscle cells. And that when you stop eating glucose, it's those years of storage that will keep your, what's your number down to, or your baseline. It will keep your baseline very steady. The body really likes that steady. And so that baseline is the power of glycation. Glycation is the word that means glucose is sticky. It's sugar. Okay. It's sticky, and it sticks to things it shouldn't stick to, like parts of your brain, parts of your nerves, your red blood cells, but tendons and eyeballs and blood vessels. And that stickiness will glycate proteins. It is truly the first place it does glycate are the proteins throughout the body. And you give me a protein, we can talk about how it glycates. So if we talk about a dangerous protein in the brain, those are amyloid proteins. Those are those little nasty things that we know are found in brains that have advanced Alzheimer's. But we also know it starts a lot before the Alzheimer's. It starts a lot before the memory problem. And that if you've got some methodical ways of lowering that down to number, that baseline number, that the body's built-in mechanisms for undoing that are remarkable. You are gifted with the human brain, with the human mechanics, with the most advanced mammal on earth to repair. And you have a conscious choice to say, we used to tell people once you have diabetes, you're in my clinic forever. And now we can say, yeah, type 2 diabetes is a choice. It is reversible. It is reversible. It is reversible. And that choice is not for sissies, especially if you've had it for a while. It takes a lot of reframing your mind of what is normal, because as those excess blood sugars accumulate in the body and they fill up all the storage in your liver and they fill up all the storage in your muscles, now it's just trying to squish it into the bloodstream as much as it can hold. And of course, it just means it's going to stick to more things throughout the body. It's why my 2022 mission was to teach people how important it was to check their average blood sugar and to leave me out of the equation. Just prick your fingers, send in the test, and do it on your own. And we spent a hearty chunk of our resources on whenever we went to a conference to say, we'll pay for it. Just let us prick your finger and watch what your numbers are, because of how much that is an eye-opener for what is your average blood sugar in your body. And knowing that we had a contest in our team that said, no, let me show you what your blood sugars are. And then we tested everybody as we trained them for a couple of the shows, and mine was higher than it should have been. So I'm human too, but so were a couple other people on the team. And so I said, all right, nothing better than positive peer pressure to change people. So how about live on our show, we show you what it looks like in 4 weeks from now, and then 4 weeks after that. And when you're committed to saying, oh, it's hard to lower it. But when you do it in a tribe of people, you're mirror neuroning from other people. You're copying behavior of other people that do have health, that do really focus on how do you zip your lips after 6 o'clock? How do you really have a fasted state for 36 hours? And what does that do to your system? How does that lower that down to number? And it's in those steps that I have a prayer for the patients that I've buried, that are in a nursing home right now, not knowing what day it is or who their loved ones are. Those amyloid proteins are there, and they're filled of years of stickiness, layers of this excess sugar. And I didn't do a great job then of saying, how do I get it lower? I used every medication under the book, including lots of insulin. I am an internist. I've written more prescriptions than I care to admit. But with that, you get the pain of saying, all right, in their burden of teaching me the price of what it looks like to have excess sugars floating around your system and the glycation of your brain, let me be an example of how to do it differently.
I respect that so much, because you went down the traditional conventional route, and it didn't really get to the cause, right? It was more of chasing the symptoms. And we understand that sometimes, a lot of the time, symptoms could be far removed from the cause. And what if we could stop the progression now? Because to your point, it took many, many years for these diagnoses to be made. Cancer, many, many years. Autoimmune, type 2 diabetes, it doesn't happen overnight. It'll take 10, 20, even sometimes longer. But meanwhile, the body's doing everything it can to survive. So it's storing the sugar different areas, and it's glycating, to your point, and it's destroying the brain chemistry. It's destroying our arteries. And the test you were referring to is an A1C, for those who are wondering. We spoke about the importance of getting an A1C done yesterday, along with other markers, like I spoke about inflammatory markers. So I kind of lined you up perfectly. I know that experiment started with your family, right? Like your family kind of runs this competition who has the lowest A1C, and then you brought it to your staff and your team. I did your test, which is a great, easy way to get a kit at home, finger prick, send it in, and you get the results. So I did mine recently. It was 5.2. I want to work on that even more too, to get it like 5.1 or even better. I know you always say the lower the better, but maybe
go ahead and ask the question.
No, I was going to say, could you go a little bit deeper into A1C, how like this works and what exactly it's showing? And just explain the A1C a little bit more if you can.
Sure. So I think a slide does a good job too, if you want to share slides.
Yeah, if you hit present and then go to either share screen and open that up.
I'm going to do.
It should be able to play or show for us. Let's see.
And then, hold on. Okay, perfect. So I need it to change to this iPad.
And for those who are watching here, we have almost 300 of you live right now. If you could post, if you've done an A1C in the last year or two, if you're comfortable with it, like what were your numbers? What was your last A1C? If you've dropped your A1C, show what was before, what it is now. I'd love to kind of get an idea of those. So I see 7, 5.9, 6.2, 4.9, 5.9. Awesome.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds here because I have to share a screen from an iPad, and so I didn't have it turned on, and I had to unplug and plug it back in.
Go for it. I'm just going to read the comments here. So I see 5.4, 5.2, 11.2. We have work to do here. 5.7 dropped to 5.5. Awesome. Yeah, she's going to show you something here that's going to be enlightening, and we're going to give you an option to get one of her kits, which is very convenient. If you want to email it to me, too, I could see if I could pull it up on my end as well, Dr. Boz.
Yeah, I'll skip the iPad. I can just use it on the second screen I've got here. Either way works. And I have, people have character flaws. One of my character flaws is I have a screen. I have a slide deck for every teachable moment.
Wow, it's impressive.
It does not make it functional. It just makes it. Okay, here it is.
Oh, Gloria did it with you in Orlando, Keto Summit. Cool.
Oh yeah. And those are some of the ones where it really is a great test, and it teaches people so much about how red blood cells do all the talking. Okay, so here we go. Now I can push. Okay, so now I'm looking for the word present on my thing. Oh, found it. Yep, present. And then
share screen and then select that.
Yep. So then share. Okay, share screen. Okay, share screen. And oh, beautiful.
Is it up? Let's see. I don't see it. Okay, here now I see it here. There we go. Boom.
And I can make that full screen here. So let's just do view. Enter full screen. Here we go. This is a little easier. Okay.
I want to take a quick break from the video you're watching to share something with you. If you've been following me on social media or any of my online platforms, you always see me wearing these glasses. And I always get asked the question, hey, why are you wearing those tinted glasses? Well, these are blue light blocking glasses, and they are very beneficial to protecting brain function and being productive throughout your day. If you're like me, you are surrounded by artificial light every single day, from the computer screen, phone screen, artificial lights, and your brain needs to filter out the junk light. We're just not designed to filter that out, and it's a lot to filter out. So the analogy is this. If you had a computer open in a web browser with 100 tabs open in your web browser, and hey, that's probably you, your computer is going to function slow. It's going to dysfunction, and it's just not going to be optimized. But what happens if you take those 100 tabs and close them all out and just maybe leave a couple tabs open? Your computer is going to function better. This is the same thing with your brain. When you use high quality blue light blocking glasses, you filter out the extra junk light so your brain doesn't have to do so. A result, you feel better. You think clear. and you have a more productive day. And that is why I wear these glasses. The glasses that I'm wearing and that I recommend is from Bon Charge. They are a sponsor of this channel, and they make some really cool, high quality, well-researched blue light blocking glasses for the daytime, like the ones you see me wearing now, and for the nighttime that are more orange, red tinted. So at night, I switch over to those. They have cool styles like the ones you see here, and also clear frames as well. They have reading glasses. You could get your prescriptions in those glasses, and they have a whole range for you. So all you need to do to get your hands on a pair of Bon Charge glasses or any of their wonderful products is head over to boncharge.com/ketokamp. Use the coupon code KetoKamp at checkout and save 15% off your entire order. We'll drop a link and the coupon code for you down below in the video notes. So go ahead and get yourself charged up with their awesome products. Okay, let's go back to this video.
So, aren't those gorgeous?
That's incredible. Great job.
Yeah. So if you look at these are red blood cells, and we're when you look at this test, hemoglobin A1C, we are actually taking your red blood cells and we're looking inside. In the depths of your red blood cells, they have a very unique setting in our body. They don't own a nucleus. And they own these goofy little things called strings of hemoglobin. The heme part is the purpley strings, and the globin part is the yellow things. And those little balls we just dropped in there are iron. As you watch these little units, we want that hemoglobin to be doing its number one most important job, which is to deliver oxygen throughout your body. As the oxygen binds to those four little yellow heme units, they go on what I think of as the ride of their life.
This is great.
If you're thinking of Mrs. Fizzle from the school bus series, then I win. Anyway, so here's a red blood cell with a whole bunch of hemoglobins, and they are finding their positions. They do this every microsecond of your day, and the binding of how many oxygen units that you deliver to your brain, to your heart, to your big toe is dependent on how well you fill those seats. So here is a place we all know a little bit more about over the last couple of years, which is your alveoli. This is the place where COVID likes to live. And it's also the place where you exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide. Those little arteries that have one of the most unique linings, that blue part there's only one place in the body you find that viscous that trades out carbon dioxide and allows the oxygen to go into circulation. If you looked at what oxygen was going to do normally, it was going to sit there and only feed the little cells that it's close to. And that's the beauty of what our red blood cells do, is that we don't need to just feed the cells next to our alveoli. We need to feed the cells throughout our body. So as you measure depths of chronic inflammation or chronic disease, we correlate that directly to, well, how well did we get oxygen to their tissues? And your doctor has been checking this over and over and over again, every 3 months, as often as your insurance would let you, as soon as they see that your hemoglobin, or that your blood sugars are elevated. And this chart shows you all the diseases that are directly linked to your blood sugars. Wow. That's heart disease. That's cancer. I have a new updated one this year for the speech I'm going to do in a couple of days, which said COVID was number 3. Suicide bumped off the list of top 10, and COVID was number 3. But the 2 in silver were the ones that we couldn't directly link to your blood sugar, but the rest of them are clearly and mathematically linked to your blood sugar. And so the part that most people don't appreciate is that the red blood cell has this unique process where it allows into the cell this unique molecule without a receptor. This is a picture of a muscle cell, and that receptor right there is a carrying device to get them across the cell membrane and into the inside of a cell. But your red blood cells do not need that carrying device or receptor to get glucose in. So this is where the higher your blood sugars, the more it's going in and out of those red blood cells. It doesn't matter if you're insulin resistant or not. It's just, it's a numerical mathematical equation. And if you have a red blood cell that comes near that magnet, that globin, it will push oxygen out of the way and it sticks in that spot for a lifetime. So these red blood cells last 100 days, about 100 days, about 3 months. And if on the first day out of the bone marrow, this baby blood vessel has a hemoglobin that gets squished or splatted by the gummy process of a glucose, it's there forever. Now, this guy can only carry 3 oxygen and not 4. That's what glycation is. This demonstration is the same process that happened in your brain, the same process that happens to the, when people say, I have arthritis, I'm like, what you really have are glycated tendons. And if you can get those glycated tendons unglycated before they calcify, which takes a long time, then we have hope. But it is also why inflammatory problems are so linked to the process of how high is their blood sugar? What is their average blood sugar? So when we look at blood sugars, if we put one in the way, it again doesn't leave. And I think the next one shows me what you got to look at. Yeah, just showing how the oxygens are less. You don't get to deliver as much. And what happens is those cells, wherever they are, they atrophy and die. And the death of cells, it means that your barriers to linings are not as protective, and that your kidney cells don't work as well, your heart cells don't work as well. And when we start talking, oh, what's your hemoglobin A1C? What's your hemoglobin A1C? And people's eyes kind of glaze over. Even doctors, after a while, you're like, yeah, their A1Cs, thank God it's down to 7. But I think it is the ultimate question to say, how glycated is your hemoglobin? Because it transfers to all of those other places. And when we push out a number and say, guess what? Your glycation is not an accident. It is a direct proportion for what is your blood sugar. The name of that test, hemoglobin A1C. So here's the part that I was trying to get to, but when you have animation, you cannot skip forward.
No, the animation, this is fantastic, by the way. I love this.
So 4%, if we take 4% of those seats and we put a splat of gum or glucose on them, that is 100 of those seats are in front of you. 4 of them are glycated. That's called a 4% hemoglobin A1C. That's why the percentage comes in, as we're looking at out of 100, how many are glycated, and that is an average blood sugar of 68. When we look at that, we know that averages are the real thing. So people prick their finger and they say, Doc, my sugar is never lower than 100. And I'm like, if that's the case, we can tell you right now that you've got plenty of glycation going on. Yeah. Welcome to the human race, that it's fixable. And when I look at the time that people's blood sugar raises after they eat, they'll wake up in the morning and I say, look at your morning fasting blood sugars. This is where I can decide, I can help you see how much insulin is it taking, or how well is your insulin working in your body. When they eat, it should come back down within a couple of hours, and it should never really rise that high. When we look at, I did a mission trip this summer in Honduras, and there was a little boy named Willie who was fascinated that I was checking my blood sugars. And so I said, I can turn these tables and check yours. And he thought that was the coolest thing. Anyways, so I got several points of data for him, and his hemoglobin A1C was like on the edge of malnourishment, because he's super scrawny. The only food he gets is when he's at school. There is no snacking at night. He eats at 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the afternoon, knowing he's going home to no place with refrigeration and no place with food. So his average A1C was 4.5. And he burns carbs during the day because that's what they feed him. But he's as skinny as a rail. He turns on those ketones at night and burns fat as soon as he goes to sleep. And it's in that metabolic flux of his cells are using glucose when he eats, but because he is not insulin resistant, because there's not a lot of glycation going on, his body will turn on those ketones at night. And by golly, he has better blood sugars than both you and I put together. And as I look at, actually, I'm going to skip forward to the part I want to get to on this one, because it is the process of Oh, it's the next slide I wanted anyway. Dang it. Should have just stayed there. All right. So here's what it looks like to have 5 of them. And take a guess. So you said yours was 5.2?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think your average blood sugar was?
I would say 90, 88, 90.
Yeah. So 5.0 is 97. So it'd probably be just north of 100. And I think, I don't want to do this again. I'm going to go to this one down here. It goes through all the numbers and just kind of, it's fun to watch this because when we add a sugar and then that's 126. And so those folks that just said, here's your blood sugars. When we look at, I don't want to do that either. Sorry, this is the one I was trying to click on. Mad scientist here, but there's a pattern. So that was 7, and here's 8.
183.
Yeah, so there was an 11, you said?
Someone who was at 11, yep. I think it was Danelle.
Yeah. So you can see there's just 9 of those glucose filled now, but that's a blood sugar of 211. And you can see that why when they get to an A1C of 11, you've got an average blood sugar that's plus or minus 269, and that's average. That means there's times it's much higher than that. And
what's
your body, highest I've seen?
Yeah, highest A1C you've seen.
19.
19. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. Very dangerous.
Yeah. And here's just the scale. So if we don't count in whole numbers, we are very there's millions of spots. So this just kind of scrolls through, and if you find your number, you can see your average blood sugar. And it's not without a major punchline to say, well, how glycated is your brain? How glycated is your big toe? How glycated is your heart? And the process of reducing this, it's hard because you got a set point inside your system that's saying, but you used to be 190 pounds and now you're trying to be 175. And there's so many forces inside the body trying to push it back up to what it was set at, that the years people live at that higher body mass and at a higher blood sugar have led to their system being a set point that is, like I said, much higher. So thanks for letting me do my favorite thing, which is use slides to teach.
That was so good. Brilliant. You're our brilliant teacher. Those slides are epic. Everybody watch the replay and look at that again. So, all right, a lot to unpack there. You clearly demonstrated why those diseases happen. Lack of oxygen, glycation. It starts with your sugars increasing, and you could identify where you're at and get a baseline by getting an A1C done. Yeah, you could get an A1C done through insurance. You could try that route, but you also could get it from Dr. Boz. She has a kit. Where's the best place to get your kit, by the way?
Yeah, bozmd.com. In the store, you can buy an A1C. We think we finally just got approved on Amazon too. So,
oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah. So Amazon is really funky about medical tests online. So we had to do literally a year of paperwork to get there. I'm so pray to God it stays. Because if you send to Amazon, it's really game of whack-a-mole. But it is truly this access for you, because if you do order it from your doctor, that's great. Do that. I've done them on the same day 3 or 4 times now, and they are, I mean, all the studies say they match, but I've been around the schoolyard enough times to say, I should check it. I'm just going to check it. Perfect match every time. I've been really thankful for that. But also that your insurance will only cover it if you have a diagnosis of diabetes. They will only cover it every 3 months, so 4 times a year. And it's because it's the life of the blood cell. Oh, you can only look at it every lifespan. But that's not true. It's an average that should be coming down. So when we do our competition on the show, we said, no, I don't want to wait a year to show you that I'm better. And if you've ever looked at, the behavior model for feedback, you wait 3 months to tell somebody how they're doing. Guess what? They are off the wagon. They do not care. But if you're on a contest and you say, okay, I have 4 weeks to move the needle. I have 4 weeks to change the average. That means you got to get your game on, man. You got to have some intensity in how you perform and what your numbers are going to be. And so it turned out great, because I think at Keto Kamp, which was in June, I was an embarrassing either 5.5 or 5.4. I actually can't remember now. And then I dropped to 5.3, and then right at Thanksgiving, I was 5'1". So my goal is to stay in the fours, which is where I'd been for years, but turns out moving at the age of 50 with 3 teenagers and a
Stress.
business, holy smokes. Yeah.
I love that. I love the idea of doing it with a group of people. It's inspiring me, outside of this challenge with our Keto Kamp Academy students, to do a challenge where we do this and we kind of track each other's A1C. So you could get your A1C kit, bozmd.com. I have a couple of questions. You showed the graph of Willie in Honduras.
Yeah.
And it showed he's very metabolically flexible. So they gave him sugar, or carbs during the day. So he was burning glucose primarily. And then he essentially didn't eat. I guess he was fasting because he didn't have food, or maybe he had some things. But then he went into ketosis, fat burning. Would that be the goal for most people, to have that metabolic flexibility where you could actually use both pathways efficiently?
Right. I track these with patients and with people that I closely mentor. And it's shocking to them when they watch me on my live show and I'll prick my finger. And at the beginning of the show, I have lower ketones. And at the end of the show, I'll have more ketones, or the flexibility that when I'm on a 3-day fast, what happens and how my ketones flex. And so they show up into the life of checking glucose and ketones with 20 years of 15 extra, 20 extra, 50 extra pounds. And they wonder, well, why can't I get my ketones to rise? Why can't I get my ketones to rise? Or what's more likely is they drop their carbohydrates and they get on a ketogenic diet and they're peeing ketones. But 4 weeks later, they check their finger and they can't find ketones. They can't pee ketones. They can't find ketones in their circulation. They're like, I'm doing everything like I was 4 weeks ago. Why is this not working? And it's a fantastic comparison. It's why I use Willie, is he has no insulin resistance. This is what it looks like to have no insulin resistance, to never have been overweight. And his body is healthy. That's what healthy looks like. Yes. Is that as soon as the glucose runs out, maybe he stored a little bit extra, but not much. He then makes ketones, and he uses ketones to survive the night. Do I think my adult patients are going to be as metabolically flexible as Willie? No. But do I think that you should be able to flex and make ketones while you fast overnight? Yes.
That's a goal.
And when I'm looking at how healthy are my patients, I'm looking at that number first thing in the morning, when there's the least amount of noise in their life to screw up my test, meaning they've been sleeping. Hopefully they peed, and I want them TOT, test on the toilet. Like, don't screw this up. Don't go walk the dog. Don't go start the coffee pot. Just check it before you mess it up. Because every part of stress or excitement or yawn, and not really, but like life changes it. So give me the least noisy data. And first thing in the morning with hours of no eating, I want to know what's your glucose and what's your ketone. And that tells me how metabolically flexible you are. And when people say, at first, it was great. And I'm like, yes, wait for it. Because you just stressed your system. Yeah. And when people say, well, I'm in keto worked for me for a while and then it didn't. I'm like, no, you're designed to use ketones. And when you are living in today's world, it is a trap. It is a trap to get into a place where you're only burning glucose for most hours of the day. And even when you stress your system to go on a lower carbohydrate diet, you're going to fall backwards if you don't do some of these other things. And we can go into that, but it is a place where I check metabolic flexibility. You should migrate from always using glucose to at least during the night when you don't eat anything, to wake up in the morning and have some ketones in circulation. And we've done a lot of teaching on my channel about your normal dawn phenomenon, where your glucose rises in the morning because your cortisol comes from your pineal gland to your liver and says, hey, wake up. I'm going to give you a fresh splash of sugar. It does that every morning. And if it's so much sugar that there are no ketones around, you are still in the problem lane. You are not metabolically healthy yet. So yeah. It's a sign. And do I have perfect ketones in the morning? No. I've been working at this for many years and I still have the consequences of, guess what? If I eat too late, if I have too many carbs in a day, it rears its ugly head and it's back.
Yeah, it's not about perfection. It's about progression, right? And that's what you're talking about here. And you mentioned, It took years, many, many years for an individual to develop these high levels of glucose and the metabolic challenges. So it's going to take time to reverse that. The great news is that it can all be reversed. Like, the human body is so incredible and so adaptable as long as you continue doing your part. But it's not just the diet. It's not just keto. That's one very important tool. But to your point, Dr. Boz, it's the stress. I always talk about gratitude, vitamin G. It's like having a daily practice of getting your daily dose of vitamin G, mastering your stress, not scrolling on your phone all day long. It's a combination of all these different tools. What are your favorite ways that you teach your patients to get into this vitamin G presence and oxytocin boost?
So it's funny because right before our show, I had some stress today. So I was doing this.
Oh yeah, you taught me about that.
Okay, where it is the fastest hack to get your brain to slow down. And I think any people using courage in today's world, you're going to have days where it doesn't go like you think it should. It hits you with the left hook. But there are some awesome hacks in life. I'm a woman of faith. I have my daily devotion and my prayers to say, okay, fill me up with some grace today and let me be that to the world. But I still fail. And some of the best physical hacks that I've used with lots of addiction patients, lots of patients with brain injury, are left-handed loops. And that's what that is. So it's messy for a reason. It's part of the process is to let go of and let your left hand, your non-dominant hand, write loops across the table or across the tablet, and do that for at least 3 minutes. And to watch the MRI before they do that versus after they do that, the amount of noise, which is slang for a bunch of other things, but that's probably the best way to talk about it, is less in the brain.
Wow, 3 minutes.
Yeah. And the other major thing that I do is I have people do 1 minute of jump rope.
What does that do?
So
besides activate the lymphatic system. What does that do?
Right. Yeah. Well, 1 minute is not a lot of time commitment. I work with elders. So I tell them, the weight on your knee as you go down the stairs is about 10 times the weight that you have when you jump an inch off the ground with 2 feet. So don't give me, you have knee pain, you have back pain. This is part of your body having a little stress to improve, but it's mainly for your brain. When you take your right hand and your left hand, and they have to work in coordination, and then there has to be a rhythm, which is using your cerebellum, that little part of your brain way at the back. But if you're in gross anatomy and you take the brain out and you say, let's weigh the cerebellum against the rest of the brain, all of the white matter, the gray matter, the spinal cord, so if you weigh them, this is twice as heavy as the rest of the brain because that cerebellum has that many dense neural connections.
Wow.
And is so core to why we are such an advanced mammal. So that rhythm, that rhythmic nature is not only using crosstalk, right hand, left hand, but also using rhythm. You get similar results if you play the piano, but this one raises your heart rate too. And I don't have to teach you piano lessons.
Do you play piano, by the way?
Well, my children did. So I figured if I've taught 3 boys how to play the piano for the better part of 18 years, I play enough.
Yes.
I played as a kid, but I bet my parents that if I got a 1+ on this damn recital piece that I could quit piano in the 7th grade, and I got a 1+.
So you quit it. Hey, I want to take a minute to share something with you as we take a break from the video you're watching. One of the most common things I see to why people don't have enough energy levels, they have trouble building lean muscle mass, they have brain fog, fatigue, and they don't feel good is because of a deficiency in a hormone called testosterone. Now, testosterone is a very important hormone to have in a healthy amount for both men and for women. So how do you reclaim your vitality? How do you reclaim this very important fat burning and muscle building hormone? Well, you can do it with a powerful supplement called Upgraded Tea. It has been my go-to for naturally elevating testosterone levels. Upgraded Tea is from Upgraded Formulas, and it contains the highest quality of ingredients that have been proven scientifically to increase testosterone production. Now, as I mentioned, if you're a woman watching this, this is very important for you just as a man watching this right now. Upgraded T is a natural and safe way to boost testosterone levels. When you boost testosterone levels, it's going to increase your sex drive, vitality. It could help replace fatigue with all-day energy. It'll help you lose that stubborn belly fat. Testosterone is required for fat burning, so it'll help you with the last 5 to 10 pounds that you're looking to lose. It helps you be in a better mood, helps with your memory and focus. So here's the 3-step approach. Step 1, take 2 capsules of Upgraded Tea with water every morning. It does not break your fast. You can have it with food or without food. Step number 2, notice your energy levels and dominate your day with more confidence and more vitality. Step number 3, wake up the next day having better sleep and just keep doing what you're doing. As simple as that. So if you want to get your hands on upgraded formulas, Upgraded Tea, and any of their awesome products like their upgraded magnesium and their hair mineral analysis testing kit, head over to upgradedformulas.com. And if you use the coupon code ketosis at checkout, they're going to give you 15% off your entire order. That is upgradedformulas.com, ketosis at checkout. We're going to drop that link down below. And let's get back to today's video. That is interesting about, using both hands, the coordination, what it does for the brain. It makes me think, because I don't know if you know this, Dr. Boz, when we talk about like different careers out there, we know there's doctors, there's teachers, different careers. The highest, the longest lifespan with different careers is actually conductors, orchestra conductors. So I wonder if there's something going on there with the hands moving and the brain, because there's some sort of link there. Isn't that interesting?
Gotta be interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's a fun fact. Okay, so we discussed the importance of getting an A1C done, checking your glucose and ketones, what the dawn effect does, why you want to check it first thing in the morning, glucose and ketones, before you look at your phone, before you enter this rat race that we're in. And then you have a baseline, and then you could work from there. It's important to get your own unique individual baseline and trust the process. It's not going to happen overnight. But over time, your body will adapt. You just got to remove the interference and the body will go on to heal itself. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk a little bit more about ketones as it relates to the mitochondria. On session 1, I discussed how ketones communicate with the mitochondria. You educate on this very brilliantly, and it helps the mitochondria produce more energy at the same time lowering free radicals via this mitochondrial uncoupling process. And you love to talk about, and you're really good at it, talking about mitochondria uncoupling. So I'd love for you to deep dive into what exactly is happening there, how that raises the basal metabolic rate so we burn more calories. What is this mitochondrial uncoupling process?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. So stop me if I go too far.
We will never stop you. Go.
So when you're looking at the beauty of what's happening in a mitochondria, it is this engine that we need activated. But if you study folks that come in my front door of an internal medicine clinic, you can almost look at their mitochondria by looking at what your brain says their youth is. I don't know if you've seen this study out of Stanford where they were trying to work on an AI tool for age prediction from your face. And so they were trying to train the computer to look at what's the age of this person. And they were comparing it to the gut reflex that people would have, saying healthy, not healthy, young, old, youthful, not youthful. I mean, they had just sorted in those ways. And how when you look at someone and you can see youth, you can see health. It's this weird thing where I can say this out loud. I don't know if I can use the words to describe it, but I totally know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it turns out when they were able to predict the youth, it also correlated to the lifespan of their mitochondria. How long could the mitochondria live? How long did they go before they went dormant? Wow. And how well were they doing at the efficiency that the mitochondria are in charge of? I mean, one of many things is the mitochondria will take your hormones. Let's just take vitamin D. It takes vitamin D and it turns it from the vitamin D that can't get into your nucleus to the kind that can. And if that vitamin D is sluggish, if it's wilted, I have beautiful pictures of.
I'm sure you do.
Just functional mitochondria and the healthy mitochondria. And a healthy mitochondria is very inflated. It's very elongated. It's not circular. It's more like an oval. It has extra folds in it. And when it spins its mechanisms through that chain of reactions, it puts out a very robust amount of energy as long as it's not inflamed. And the inflammation inside a mitochondria has so many mechanisms to undo it. Your body is not designed to fail. It's designed to fix what you do wrong, to have an escape route to improve. And so by the time a mitochondria causes people to age, that look in the thing saying, how can that person be 40? They look 60. Mm-hmm. That aging too fast is that all of the mechanisms that were supposed to be reset the mitochondria, get it back going again, have failed. And inside the mitochondria, if you look at them under like an electron microscope, so you can see the folds, you can see what they're doing. The folds aren't as many. The internal cell lining, so it's a subcellular lining around the mitochondria. It's kind of got a deflated look, not a nice taut full look. And it's through all of these points that you can rack up on, is it a healthy mitochondria or not healthy mitochondria, that the human brain in this AI, which always did better than the computer, was able to say healthy, not healthy, healthy, not healthy, healthy, wow. Not healthy. And so I always think of it as the best compliment when patients come in and say, Doc, it's been 3 weeks and the scale hasn't changed. And I said, well, does anything good happen? I'm like, oh yeah, you can't believe how everybody tells me I look younger. And I use that as a way to say, so there's a whole bunch of geeky science going on in that mitochondria, that mitochondria has a programmed subcellular death as well, that apoptosis of mitochondria. Like, it's not working, just throw it away, it's worthless. Mm-hmm. Before it does that, it becomes dormant, so it's useless. It's taking enough energy to stay alive, but that's not much. And when we look at the health of people, we can rate that health by how many mitochondria were activated inside their muscle cell, inside their brain cells, astrocytes, inside their cardiac cells. Yeah. And when they are filled with insulin, they have all those years of elevated blood sugars. And I know people love to get off in the weeds about hormones of estrogen and testosterone and cortisol. And I'm like, start with hormone number 1, which is insulin. It's 90% of your problem, and you are losing focus of how to improve until you reduce the insulin, because that insulin signals, just shut it down. He's not useful. We'll live without him for now. And then they start to have cracks in them. So one of my slides is lovely. It's a broken mitochondria. And I talk about how, as glucose are spinning through that mitochondria, if it's broken, the little cracks that it has, that's where these electrons leak out. Mm. And so those are free radicals. That's your reactive oxygen species. Those are those nasty, gnarly things that take our DNA and they crinkle it, and they cause transcription errors so that our proteins are no longer the proteins we want. They're the proteins that, oh, smack, they activated a cancer. Oh, dang, they activated an autoimmune disorder. Oh, they made more amyloid. They worsened my dementia. Those were not the proteins you were trying to protect from. They were the ones you were trying to undo. And they came from that mitochondria that's leaking out the excess
ROS, yeah.
Right. So you say, well, how do I fix that, Doc? How do I fix that? Number one thing you have to do inside the mitochondria is to reduce the inflammation. You have to have less, I call it heat, but that's not probably the best word in this case. You have to have less wasted energy. You have to have efficient energy. So the fastest way to do that is switch fuels, go to ketones, use ketones all the time, as much as you can possibly use them, and find a way to hack to get the ketones to be what you use all the time. When I'm working with a cancer patient, they are testing ketones all the time. I want to know 6 times a day, what are your ketones levels? What's your glucose levels? We want those numbers. Where are you failing? How many hours after eating did you fail? We don't have time to say, I need you to adjust your life and find your Zen moment to give up carbs. I need you to give up carbs, and we're going to have to deal with biohacking, biologically hacking your behavior when we get past this first round of chemo. And in that spirit, it is remarkable how fast, when pushed to a life or death situation, people can see the production of healthy ketones being used by a body at a remarkably fast rate. Now, they're under doctor supervision because a lot of crap can go wrong, especially if you're on a bunch of medications. Most of the other people, I'm like, you don't need a doctor to be on a ketogenic diet. There are some important steps that you should know about before you start. Yep. But for the most part, they are all associated with people who are on medication or should be on medication, but have avoided the doctor and aren't on them. And that's fine, but you're still going to have some of the consequences of what happens when I shift that fuel from a highly glucose dependent mitochondria to a ketone dependent mitochondria. And it's in that process where I can now start to predict how well that ketone is going to be replaced. That mitochondria is going to be replaced. So we talk about autophagy, the replacement of cells when they are either not living up to their part of the deal or their protein is not useful anymore, and they'll recycle and say, let's use the parts of this little thing. But what's more powerful is how that stimulation to shut down a mitochondria and start another one is the beginning steps for repairing their metabolism, repairing that, oh, you look healthy. And I think, there are several studies to look at when inside a muscle cell, how many mitochondria on average are you using? And by nature, your male cells are going to have more mitochondria than my female cells. And when we both get bathed by insulin, you're going to drop mitochondria faster than me. But we're both going to get to a low part that is just barely enough to keep that cell alive. And the price you pay for having that is a bunch of free radicals, a bunch of those reactive oxygen species that tear up the inside, ping pong off and destroy cells in the wrong way. And that is good for cancer, good for autoimmune problems, good for aging, not good for a strong metabolism.
Yeah, what a masterful breakdown. I love that you went deep there because we were discussing the mitochondria on Monday, as I mentioned. And one of my questions, I did a quiz question for the group here. I asked them, which cells do you think have the highest concentration of mitochondria? And I kind of gave them a clue. I said, look, the number one priority for the innate intelligence is survival. So it's going to be the cells that are most needed for survival. And it's the brain cells, right? Some regions have, millions of mitochondria.
Yes.
And then you have like the eyeballs, the heart, the ovaries. What do they all have in common? As you know, Dr. Boz, they're all really important for survival, reproduction. And then we have other cells that might have a few hundred mitochondria that are just not as important for survival. And a couple of things that I've learned about mitochondria is that 100%, and you could correct me if I'm wrong here, but 100% of mitochondria that we get is inherited from mom. And then number two, about 10 to 20% of your total body weight is composed of mitochondria. It's like your body's loaded with them. So when we talk about the mitochondria, it's very important to understand pretty much every disease out there is linked to this mitochondrial dysfunction process. I didn't know that fact about vitamin D being converted to a usable form by the DNA. That's super interesting. And I talked about the number one thing that shuts down vitamin D from even being produced is insulin, right? It doesn't matter how many vitamin D supplements you take. If insulin is high, it's like you're not going to get the process. So it seems like the common theme here is that all roads are leading to insulin. And if we can lower insulin, the body's going to function better, including the mitochondria.
Yeah, it's actually the biggest punchline that I see a lot of keto coaches or advisors is once you get in the space and you kind of get your head around ketones and glucose and metabolism, they want to say, well, what's new? What can I teach this new? What can I teach this new? And they are off in the weeds about some like progesterone estrogen ratio. And I'm like, you got to fix insulin before any of that crap matters. So you can learn about it, but your patients shouldn't hear word one about that until you have a vitamin D north of 100 routinely for 3 months.
Oh, wow. So wait, a vitamin D north of 100 routinely for 3 months. That's your goal.
That would be so we have the competition that first started in our house was the vitamin D one.
Oh,
so that it had been out for a couple of years. Same company does the same process where it looks at vitamin D. And I repair brains for a living. If you want to see the biggest sabotage for a brain repair, it's a vitamin D that's south of 50. We know that if it's between 40 and 50, there are symptoms of depression, anxiety. We know if it's between 30 and 40, that you have I can't remember off the top of my head now, the statistical chance of having a diagnosis for anxiety, depression, or one of the mood disorders that is not extreme. You get south of 20 and you lose IQ points. There are, and that's because it is so vital. And that word gets used so much, people forget. No, it's required for life. It's so vital that when you watch what your cells do when the vitamin D is inside the cell and the mitochondria turns it on, now it can slip into that nucleus, and then in that nucleus out comes a bunch of proteins. And what proteins come out? Well, it depends on what cell you're talking about. For the brain cell, it is how they make neurotransmitters, how they repair the brain, how they sleep at night, how do they deal with inflammation. All of those are related to different proteins in your brain. A couple of specific ones called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, really interesting molecule that Google it. But again, you can't make that if your vitamin D is low. And I mean, if it's less than 50. You can make it at a slowish pace, less than 50. So in my practice, when they're coming to see me for brain injury, they're coming to see me because their brain doesn't work. And step one, got to get the vitamin D above 50. I don't care how we do it. And I have seen, again, people doing their best, trying to find the right answer for people, saying, well, the lab test says that it's toxic if it's above 100. And I'm like,
there's no such thing.
Right. Let me show you what we really know. So let's go to the extreme. The people who I think are some of the bravest physicians on the world, which is the frontline people. Have I told you this story before?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. So that are on the front lines of COVID response when people were in the ICU. And so once they get on the ventilator, the death rates were, north of 80%. They're dying. They're dying so quickly they don't have enough ventilators, right? And so we say, well, what are some of the predictors that would improve their immune system to work right now? And that is, get vitamin D inside that white blood cell. So instead of taking the vitamin D, which is a fat soluble drug, so you're going to take it, it's going to get to your gut, then your acid's going to break it down, then you get to GI, and you got to absorb it, and got to go through your lymph system. Okay, it's got a long path before it's going to get to your white blood cells. Okay, let's skip that. Let's put it in their vein. Okay, it's a fat soluble thing going in their vein. Let me tell you, that was going to take a whole bunch of FDA approvals. Oh, but it's COVID, so we're doing it on the people that are about to die, and we're giving them intravenous. I want to say it was 150,000 units of vitamin D. I mean, it's so freaking high. It's beyond.
And it's high and it's IV. So it's going right into it's highly absorbable. It's being used.
Right.
Wow.
So they put that in and it changed survival rates. It didn't change ventilations. It didn't change infection rate. I mean, it did change those things. They didn't look at the little bitty things that people sometimes measure in a study to make it look sexy in a headline. They said, did they live? It changed survival rates.
Amazing.
So, and at the same time, they're saying, well, we have all these naysayers. You're going to get them toxic. You're going to get them toxic. I'm like, no toxicities were documented. Zero toxicities were documented.
Has there ever been a vitamin D toxicity ever documented? I've never come across it. There has been?
Yeah, they get psychotic.
Oh, really? So at what levels typically is that? Like over 200 or?
Yeah, I think I don't know what their blood levels were. I just know the symptoms were high. I mean, that's what so again, bell-shaped curves, they want people to have zero toxicity. So I can tell you that they must have had a few of them documented in the hundreds, because that's where the toxicity is said to be. But if you ask me what I want my vitamin D to stay at, and I was really good about taking my vitamin D when I lived in South Dakota. And then I got to Florida. I thought the sun was going to help me, but damn, it means you actually have to leave the office and be in the sun.
That's true.
So I've had a really crappy time getting my vitamin. But my goal is always to be at least 50, up to 150. Like, that's where I want to stay. And again, this is not medical advice.
Yeah, not medical advice. But here's the here's the downside of this. You go to a regular doctor, or somebody goes to the regular doctor, they get vitamin D. They see on that reference range, it might show 30 to 100. So maybe they're 32. And the doctor will say nothing about it. Like, you're in the range, you're good to go. But that is a deficiency. You mentioned you're getting these neurological symptoms, anxiety, depression, immune system is dropping. So I think mine, I tested 2 weeks ago, it was 63.
Oh, nice.
I do get out in the sun. I don't take vitamin D supplementation. I haven't taken it in a while, but I do get out in the sun every day. So that's the goal for you, Dr. Boz. Let's go to the beach together in Sarasota, get some sun, get our vitamin D going, because you're already dropping insulin, me too. So it's easy for us to raise vitamin D if insulin is low. This has been so good. And I want to be, time has flew by.
Oh,
we have about 15 minutes with you. Is that right? Are you good for 15 minutes? And I do want to take some time to get to the questions from our VIP students. Are you open to doing that right now?
Absolutely, you bet.
Okay. Before we do that, so if you are a VIP student, we gave you a StreamYard link. Get into the studio. I see Deb's back here. I'll bring you on shortly, Deb. But I also checked the thread. But here's what I want to do with you, Dr. Boz. I want to do a giveaway with you, and I want you to help me give away the prize. And here's what we're going to do. So the giveaway we're giving away is, I'm going to ask this question. It's a Paleo Valley bundle, but here's the question, and Dr. Boz is going to select the winner in the comments. In a couple of sentences from what you've learned today,
this is fun.
Explain why high levels of glucose and insulin are harmful to the body and to the brain. So I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of see. You see the comments coming through.
I do. Right? I do. Yep.
So the one that resonates with you the most, we're going to reward them with this Paleo Valley bundle. So get your answers coming along here. And
so I'll tell you, Kelly Smith really wrapped it up. I've looked at several of them, but I kept her name. I wrote down.
Kelly Smith.
Short.
Kelly?
At at exactly 1 o'clock. I guess there are a whole bunch of them there, but it says glucose is sticky. It pushes vital oxygen out of our cells. So it's not a hemoglobin, but that's the point. Is it is linked to that oxygen delivery that is glycation. So I think that's a good answer, and I like keeping it simple. As soon as people get off in the weeds, then your kids don't understand.
So you are. What's the name again?
Kelly Smith.
Kelly Smith. That's a great answer. Good job, Kelly Smith. You have won the Paleo Valley bundle, courtesy of Dr. Boz. She selected you. It was a great answer. So Kelly, email us support@ketokamp.com. Put in there that you won the Paleo Valley bundle and put your shipping address, and I'll get Paleo Valley to send that over to you. So great job. We're going to do another giveaway after Dr. Boz for Kettle and Fire. So let's get into VIP Q&A. Deb, I see you on here. Deb's in Australia. She's been waking up super early to be on these live streams, and she's on again here. So, Deb, are you ready to come on here and ask Dr. Boz your question? Okay. Here's Deb Crompton in Australia.
Hello, Dr. Boz.
Hello, Deb. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, same to you. I was just watching you, and you're just beautiful to watch. Absolutely. Your face, your glow. I've seen some comments through the thread that, yeah, you're just gorgeous. Yeah, beautiful.
Well, I represent age 51, so take that.
I'm 65. Vitamin D was the thing that I was really fascinated about. And my question is, I was going to a naturopath for quite some time. And one of the big things he put me on was vitamin D, 10,000 milligrams. Is that the right terminology? To help with my thyroid.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm just very curious because I also, through my learnings with this program, is that vitamin K and vitamin D need to work together. So I actually take liquid vitamin K every day. Yeah. So I'm just wondering how that all impacts on my thyroid, and will it eventually fix it? Yeah, because I've got Hashimoto's. So I'm just, very curious on how I can repair my body in that way.
Perfect. So let me just recap a little. So Hashimoto's is a process where your immune system said, Mr. Thyroid, you are foreign. You are not part of Deb, and we're going to remove you. And the immune system says, all right, start eating away. Take away this section of the body. And it's a protein made by your thyroid. And you can see what tag it's got on there. Lab tests show us that. We can get really specific. But I would tell you to stay at 30,000 feet for a little longer and say, well, why? Why did her immune system do that? And the attack of that white blood cell system of your thyroid was one of those glycated proteins that then started to mismatch, started to not be transcribed correctly. And now you've got this replication of the defective one that's living in your system. So the good news is your body knows which one was the original, and it will always default back to the one that is the original signal. But it can't find the original signal when the body's filled with all this inflammation, all of that glycation, all of that excess insulin, excess blood sugar. One of the ways that the thyroid made the protein in the first place was that your vitamin D went into the thyroid cell, and then the mitochondria in the thyroid cell said it makes a quarter turn, adds a couple of bonds in there, and then it slips into your nucleus inside the thyroid. And the nucleus has this list of proteins it's supposed to make. And when the vitamin D is doing its job, out come the right proteins. But if you want to see where vitamin D goes first, it's all of those cells that were the first that have the highest amount of mitochondria. It was the brain cells first, and then the eye cells, and then the heart cells, and those are the ones who also keto adapt first. Thyroid's on the list, but it's south. It's not one of the top ones that's going to do it in the first week or so of transitioning into a state of ketosis. So when you're saying, well, how do I get the inflammation inside my thyroid less? Do I put like ice on it? Do I ice my thyroid? Okay, that's not going to do it. That's not going to change how the transcription is happening within the system. So the first most important is to lower your insulin. You're like, well, should I go to the doctor and get my insulin checked? I would say, don't waste your money. I've been to that chapter many times. Here's what I do. Insulin controls 2 molecules that you can prick your finger and check. It controls the blood glucose, and it controls the rate at which you can make ketones. And as your insulin lowers and becomes more efficient, the glucose isn't as high and the ketones are higher. And that's where this Dr. Boz ratio comes from. If you look at the research papers, they're called glucose ketone index, GKI. I don't care which one you use. But in my world, we simplify things. We take the big number, the glucose number. We divide by the little number, and we call it a Dr. Boz ratio. And when we get Dr. Boz ratios that are in the 40s or less, it is a signal that your insulin is improving. Your insulin is less. And like anybody who transitions on this from an autoimmune disorder like Hashimoto's or Crohn's disease or multiple sclerosis, when you first hit a change in your body, you're going to have great Dr. Boz ratios. They look really good. And everybody else in your support group grows hairy eyebrows and growls at you because like, how are her ketones 4.2? Because she's new. Her body doesn't know what to do with them yet. So as you adapt, your body will always reach for a steady state. And that's where your insulin says, okay, now I'm at my new level. And the next step is what I write about in my keto continuum, saying, now you need the next step. Now you need the next step. And if you are looking to repair that, you've got to keep that Dr. Boz ratio of 40 or less, because it is highly correlated to a low enough insulin that if you did inject vitamin D into your body, it could actually get to your thyroid. When people say, I'm taking thyroid, I'm like, yeah, but you're also eating carbs 4 times a day. Mm. So you're destroying my plan of getting thyroid filled with vitamin D. Now, in the other sense, vitamin K is another one of our fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin K. K, the fourth one, has a lot of things it does, including blood clotting. So there's a whole bunch of reasons a doctor shouldn't be talking about vitamin K outside of an exam room. But I will give you a few little things. That there's one vitamin that I put my name on. I don't make anything that I don't take or somebody in my family doesn't take. And I have one vitamin that I make, and that is vitamin D, K2D3. And it is because it is so important that it is available in your system. And I'm pretty good. You can Google one of my favorite videos that is not very well viewed, but it's totally my favorite, Dr. Boz and fermented liver. So I live eat fermented liver with my son. And you say, well, why would you do a crazy thing like that? I was trying to figure out ways that you could possibly get K2 in your diet. And it's through fermentation. And so there's this soy thing, but it tasted terrible. And I'm like, Not that fermented liver tasted that good, but I'll let you watch the video. Anyway, the point is that I have hacked every way to the moon to figure out how to get K2 in my kids and my husband. Okay, we're making a capsule. We are putting this in a pill because there is just no way I'm going to get him to eat this. And I get him to eat some pretty crazy things. So as you'll see on that video. But the point I'm making is vitamin K and vitamin D are fat soluble. So just like the rest of your body, when it says store the energy as fat, it does not exclude your fat soluble vitamins. I was on a podcast the other day and we were talking about different, forms of vitamin D, and I think it was vitamin D. It was one of the fat. Yeah, I think it was vitamin D. I'm like, well, what if you check this level of vitamin D or this type of vitamin D or that? And I'm like, you know what? Do this experiment. You can prick your finger and check vitamin D, just like you can prick your finger and check an A1C. So I had the kits at home and we checked vitamin D before I started a fast, and it was crappy. And then I went 48 hours into a fast, and then I went 72 hours into the fast, and then I went a day after the fast. So I had 4 vitamin Ds in like 5 days or something. And the point was to show you that when you're fasting, your fat cells empty. And if I have vitamin D stored in my fat cells, and I open up the fat cells to live without food, without consuming food, I'm going to empty fat cells. Guess what's in there? Vitamin D. And so nobody will do that test from a doctor's point of view because it's a waste of money and insurance not okay. But you can do it. You can just order the test, and it's maybe a little expensive to do that many of them. But the point is the teachable moment, which says inside the fat cells are testosterone and cortisol and vitamin D and estrogen and your fat-based hormones that are locked inside because of insulin. And so when people say, what should I do about this autoimmune disorder? First and foremost, I need you in a rhythm of life that does what Willie did, which is flexibly turn off the glucose and turn on the ketones. And, it's something that I have spent an inappropriate amount of hours making slides teaching. But I really think it's what I've been called to do, to say, no, let me show you what is happening in these people. And when they finally hack it and say, oh, you mean I can't just fast one time for 72 hours and make it all better? I'm like, no, honey, this can go right back to what you were doing, because your body has a message. It has a memory. And the good part about your body's memory is that it remembers which one of those hormones were your original, which one of those proteins inside your body was your original. And it will turn off that antibody in most cases when they get that inflammation out of their system. I was never able to say that before doing the ketogenic diet. I thought it was crazy. The first person I ever heard that from was Dr. Fung. And I was so relieved that another doctor had seen it. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, I get your thyroid's reversing. Why, doc? I have no idea why your thyroid is getting better. It's not in my textbook. I don't know. And I can remember that first lecture from Dr. Fung where I heard him say that. And I'm like, oh, he just said that the emperor has no clothes. The emperor has no clothes, you guys. Yeah,
that's so good. Yeah, what a great answer. Deb, thank you so much for the question. Appreciate it. Thank you for being so committed to join from Australia as well.
It's a great question. I'm sure there's lots of autoimmune people out there that were looking for that parallel. So
that's a great question. Great answer. Perfect answer. Okay, we have Tamara here. Tamara, I'm going to bring you on and ask Dr. Boz the question. Hey, Tamara.
Hi, it's good to see you, Ben and Dr. Boz. I'm totally new to keto and intermittent fasting, all this stuff. And of course, I'm super pumped up and I want to do it the fastest way humanly possible. So I was wondering, would it be better to do like carnivore? Would it be better to do keto and fasting? What is going to be the way to get healthiest the fastest?
Okay, so the first thing I would ask you is how new? Days new or weeks new?
Days new.
Okay, so welcome. When I look at teaching people, I think the best way to teach them is a story that's not them. So when you take in a book, do you like to listen to it or read it?
Listen to it.
Okay, so there is a great audiobook. I'm not being funny. It really is a great audiobook, but it is called Any Way You Can. And it is about 70% story of a patient that came to me and was in a hell of a predicament. And she asked me the question that sometimes I'm calm enough to answer honestly. She said, if it was you, what would you do? And the book walks you through the 90% of what you need to learn for a ketogenic diet. And it is also the parallels where if you try to teach someone who is as wise as you, has been around the sun as many times as you, the best way to teach them isn't to send them a workbook, isn't to send them a checklist. It's to tell them a really good story where they can find the parallels of the story in them. Once you get done with that, then I'm sure Ben has a list for you to do as well. I have a workbook that I use for patients when they come in to see me. But if they're new into keto, I tell them to go listen to a story that will inspire you. And by the end of chapter 4, you're going to have some pretty good lessons on how to do this. Because I do a live show on Tuesday nights for just teaching and trying to figure out how to communicate with the world. And I also do a free support group here in Tampa every Tuesday morning. And in November, this man knew that I was doing this free support group, and he gets in an RV every year for the wintertime, and he drives to Tampa so he can come to the support group. And he had started keto like 3 weeks before, and he went ass over apricot into keto, and he made every mistake possible. So the other way that you could look at what could you do, you could just watch the videos of my lives since then, and you will see every mistake that he's made. He's the gift that keeps on giving, keeps showing up, but is remarkable. We've got him straightened out. I think he's going to be able to get in his RV and head on his way in about a week or two and not fall off the wagon. But you're in a predicament because the step of how you do this without crashing the medical problems that are naturally going to be in a body after even just 5 years of holding on to an extra 20 pounds, let alone most of my patients are 30 years into holding on to more than 50 pounds. And that is an equation that is not for the faint of heart. There are some steps that you should be aware of. Now, you don't need a doctor most of the time, but you should know what you're getting into.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamara. Everybody go get the book. A lot of them, people, the challenge members have gotten your book. They say how great it is. I love the answer. Storytelling is so powerful. I want to be respectful of your time. I have a couple more questions that I could read. Okay, are you good for that? Okay.
Absolutely. I love this.
I love it too. Okay, so there's a few questions here from Jay, who's a VIP student who posted on the thread. So I'm going to just go through them for you to respond to. So question 1, Ben, you provided the perfect formula yesterday for determining your protein, which I told him 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight. And he says, question, do you and Dr. Boz believe I can get this amount of protein in one meal or even a 4-hour eating window? I'll let you address that first.
Okay, so do you know this person, or is this the first time you're being introduced to him?
No.
Okay.
New.
And is he live on video, or is...
No, he's not back here in the studio. I don't know if Jay, you're watching on the stream. If you are, let us know. So
here's some things that I would sort before answering the protein question. And maybe you said it, but I was reading some of the comments, and so I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry. Was if you're asking protein questions, they're usually a few weeks into keto, and I want to know what his body weight is. I want to know what his age is, and I want to know what his blood pressure is. So just some metrics that give me a sense of is he insulin resistant, and if so, then I have a protein answer that's probably not as conventional as some of the other ones. So,
yeah. So let's say, I'm not saying Jay, you are insulin resistant, but let's say Jay is.
All right, because that's the norm.
Yeah, that is the norm. What would be your response then?
Right. Unless you're Willie, you probably are insulin resistant. But for the most part, if you've been overweight, if you have blood pressure that seems to oscillate, that doesn't stay where it's supposed to be, that's a really good sign that you're holding on to too much fluid. That fluid is usually a process of glucose and insulin working together to keep water in circulation, which is where that blood pressure is elevated. Okay. So we've got an insulin resistant patient who's asking about protein. What I say is you're focused on the wrong thing. That when you look at the metabolism of that mitochondria, I'm trying to create a chemistry set, and the most powerful chemistry set gets the most powerful chemistry set is when I've got ketones being burned more hours of the day than glucose. Now, that's usually only found at the beginning of a ketogenic diet, unless I'm working really hard with a seizure patient or a cancer patient to really restrict things. if you're looking at the average person, they go keto, they got ketones, they have to pee in ketones. Okay, then they stop checking because it's boring or their strips go bad, and also that they stabilize. So then the next place they focus is, well, everybody's talking about this protein thing. And I'm like, yeah, your insulin is way more important than your protein consumption. And so I point out one of the studies that looks at what was the insulin your body produced when you ate. And so they have this really great study, and I've done this several times on show, so you can Google it and find it on YouTube. But when they took these patients, they were healthy patients. These are not insulin resistance patients. They're healthy. They've never been overweight. And they have them hooked up to continuous monitors where they can check glucose and insulin on a minute by minute basis. And they look at, they come in fasting, and they're divided into 3 groups, and they give them exactly the same grams of food, of powdered food, so particularized food. And the first group gets all fat, the second group gets all protein, the third group gets all carbohydrates. So Ben, which group do you think made the most insulin?
Well, of course, the carbs.
Right. They shot the carbs way up, or they shot the glucose way up. The insulin followed it. It took a long time to get it back to normal. And these are healthy people. Okay. So then what do you think happened with the protein part?
Also glucose and insulin response, not as much as the carbs, but what were they eating? And like, was it like real, like animal protein? Like what was the source of the protein? You said powdered. Is that what you said?
Yep. So to keep it.
Oh, got it. Powdered. So then I saw probably a huge insulinogenic response from protein with powder. Yeah.
And then what do you think happened with fat?
Baseline.
Yeah. They still produce insulin. They still
even with the fat.
Yeah.
What kind of, it was like a powder? Like what was it though?
Powdered fat.
Powdered fat because it was processed. It's still, is that why?
I don't know. So even when people were, so then this has been looked at in other places. If you just eat butter and you watch your blood sugar, and you say, oh, doc, it doesn't move at all. I'm like, put on a continuous glucose monitor, watch what happens. When you, especially if you're insulin resistant. And what happens is, right, so there is a message that starts when you begin to masticate, as soon as you start to chew, and then you swallow, and it sends a signal, and the signal remembers this is how this person's body runs. So it is really dependent on where you've been. And when people say, yep, I'm a keto and my ketones went down, and so I'm trying to get the protein right, I'm like, quit focusing there. Start focusing on how many times did you gobble food in a day? And
so frequency of eating is what you're saying here. That should be an emphasis versus your protein.
Absolutely. That I look at different steps on this keto continuum, saying, well, I get a lot of people healthy when they just do 2 meals a day. They don't have to time restrict. They eat 2 meals a day. They use satiety as how they feel. And they do not gobble food at any other time, but these 2 times per day. And that is what adults should do in the 21st century. We are not have a scarcity. We don't need to eat 3 times a day. Your children don't need to eat more than 3 times a day, period. And that process of how much insulin you make is what will sabotage the progress. Because even though you're eating less than 20 total carbohydrates per day, and I've said this for 5 years, they still are producing an excessive amount of insulin, which will store things, which will, stop that mitochondria from being able to use the ketone, to have the ketone in circulation and have access to it. So when I look at the protein discussion, I have 3 sons, and my youngest son came out red-headed, left-handed. And in the 2nd grade, when he came home and said, Mom, I'd like to wrestle, I got down to eye level and said, oh, sweetheart, you're confused. We don't wrestle. Your brothers are in debate. Okay, he's still wrestling. He's a junior in high school, and if I could push reset on Raising Boys, I'd make them all wrestle.
Wow.
But, so when you are looking at the metabolic performance of somebody who's not insulin resistant, who works out 4 hours a day and has to weigh in, we all pray for 138 pounds by tomorrow at 5 o'clock. That it is a different model of response. There I can talk about protein response. There I can talk about other things. But even in his case, you should say, you want to see what happens to people like Willie, to people like my son? Protein's not the issue. I mean, there is no reason you should have to be measuring protein when your body isn't insulin resistant. And so if you're looking for the biggest impact on insulin resistance, it's get the hours of eating into 2 boluses and then keep them within 8 hours of each other and just stay there.
Great answer. We're gonna talk more about that with Megan Ramos on Saturday.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was on a podcast with her for the first time the other day. Like, oh,
it's awesome. I'm sure you both hit it off. She's
yeah,
awesome, just like you.
You're good. She's saying the same thing I am.
Exactly. A lot of synchronicity there. All right. Next question from same person, Jay. If you are a fat burner in ketosis, am I burning fat when doing high intensity exercise, or is my body looking for glucose?
Yeah, I tell people to do their high intensity workouts fasted.
Yeah.
You're looking at, so this is another really great teachable question that I get a lot of. So I'm going to take the airwaves to teach this because I'm tired of answering it. I mean, I like answering it. This is going to give me the space to say a few less need to ask that question. So when people work out and they say, but doc, afterwards that sugar went up, they'll ask that, or doc, don't I need to preload for the wrestling meet?
I get that all the time, right?
To have sugar. Mom, can't I have sugar before my wrestling meet? I'm like, not if you want to win.
Right. Good answer.
So when you look at high intensity workout, first of all, an excellent place to put your time and energy, highest return on investment for your time and your pain is a high intensity workout. Good job. I would do it fasted, especially when I work with people. I don't have them touch the gym until I can see that their body mass is close to a norm, in that normal range, or just slightly out of like a 25 or 26 BMI, then I can get you working out. If you happen to go for a walk before that, great. But I do not add exercise until they've lost a bunch of this weight. And I do that because if I'm pushing your body and those mitochondria to do at a high peak performance, especially high intensity, high impact training, that demand from cells has to be in shape for it. And it comes from the exposure, how many months, how many replicas of cells, and this is cell turnover, all of your cells turn over, they replace each other. How many replicas did we make that were in the ketogenic state? And when they've been doing keto for 6 weeks and they say, but now I want to exercise, I'm like, you can do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend that you stay the course and focus on how is it that I can have a more narrowed eating window, a morning fasting blood sugar ketone level that is in a ketogenic state when you wake up in the morning, a reversal of at least 80% of this insulin resistance. And that gives them the fuel. I mean, they're making ketones. They are metabolically flexible. I send them to the gym. I am not worried about how well their body's going to be able to recruit ketones to deliver during what I think is worth their time, which is this impact. You know, when I look at folks that follow along with me, they get along the way, and then they stabilize. Like, well, what do I do now, doc? Like, well, you got to add a stress. And so I don't think you should be crazy and eating for only 15 minutes a day. You can have an eating window, but somewhere that fits in your life. And I hope you have a life that has people in it that you want to eat with them. And so that you have an eating window that's, I don't know, 4 hours is not bad. Okay. Have a little at the beginning, have a little at the end, find a time you're being with other humans during that time. It's a very social thing to not remove from your life. But I also push people to do, once they do that, they're like, well, now what do I do? Do I fast? I'm like, okay, well, you can have fasting once a week. Yeah. And so then they get in this habit that they're fasting 36 hours every week, and that's enough for them. They're like, that sucks. I don't want to do that anymore. So then what else can I do? And by this time, usually I've got morning fasting numbers that maybe aren't perfect, but they're a lot better. Their insulin resistance is a lot lower. And that's where I say during that 36-hour fast, flex what you've been building, flex your system, go use your muscles for an intense 30 minutes, and you will empty this storage of glucose from your muscle cells as you use them. And they have a memory. They're going to fill back up. Don't worry about that. It is how many times we can replace these muscle cells that each time the amount of stored glycogen is less. You are not going to change that until the cell replaces itself. It isn't just going to like, 2 days of keto and I'm going to have less stored glycogen. No, it's got a memory. It's going to fill that glycogen back up. So practicing emptying it lowers that average blood sugar and uses this tool that you've been building. And that in and of itself is where I find that people get in the tortoise and the hare. They get in the slow lane and say, don't make all these changes, and then you can't hold on to them. And when people are 6 weeks into keto and then they want to start exercising, I'm like, why? What is your real goal there? Spend time meditating. Spend time in a sauna. Don't pound on your blood vessels and your joints with the extra 80 pounds on them. We've already got a problem in those joints that we're trying to undo. I need the cells to replace themselves in a ketogenic state. This is going to take time.
Great answer. So what you're essentially talking about is adding specific stressors, letting your body adapt to the stressor so you get stronger, versus the go big or go home mentality, or I'm going to add this stress one day, this stress the second day, and then your body's not adapting, right? And a lot of people need to progress, to your point, especially for those who are insulin resistant. So exercise is a stressor. It could be amazing for you, but if your body doesn't adapt to that stressor, now the benefits turn into drawbacks, and now actually it becomes more inflammatory to you. So that's why it's so unique. It's so important to work with somebody to kind of guide you on that. And this is called hormesis, raising this hormetic ceiling, right? Which is perfect because tomorrow we have Dr. Pampa and Dr. Mindy, and we're going to deep dive into hormesis. So you are doing this perfect for us because our future sessions are lining up.
I'll actually add one more thing that I think is really helpful. I did this last night on my live, and I've been saving this lecture for a while to say when people lose weight, when people gain weight, they actually think they gain it pretty gradually over the last 30 years. But when you look at the Nurses' Health Study, or you look at people who are actually getting measured about when their weight was gained, it is usually at a time of stress, and then they stabilize. And then something stressful happens, and then they stabilize. And then they have something stressful happen, and then they stabilize. They forget that. They don't think that way. It's a 5 pounds here, it's 5 pounds there, it's 4 pounds there. Those are where the 100 pounds came from. And when you're looking at a marketing team for losing weight, the billboard that says we lose 2 pounds a week, we won't leave your side until it's gone. What they really have is a partner for life. Because if you're losing 2 pounds a week, what's absent from those models, and we've looked at this in animal models, you've looked at this in humans, when they lose 2 pounds a week, you're not giving the body that time where the hormones adapt, where that cholecystokinin is higher, where that satiety hormone really does turn your brain into I really don't want to eat. And there is this emotional adaptation that says, I used to be this person that exercised, so I'm going to go right back to that person that exercised. And all you did there was you went back to a failed formula because you didn't have the hormones, the stamina for rising ketones that quickly to deliver, and you did not have a lot of the repair mechanisms like the vitamin D, the other things we've been talking about, to say you got to have some tools on board in order to be an athlete that uses high intensity training. And you can all be that as long as insulin isn't your enemy. Or at least not the biggest enemy. So the best weight loss is a stress of time, a very intense time where you lose weight and then you stabilize. And then you lose some weight and then you stabilize. And along with that adaptation of those hormones and finding that new baseline for cortisol, that new baseline for ghrelin, is also a new identity that you look in the mirror and say, oh, this person that used to be me, I fight that every day. And this was such a big deal when I was in the throes of my addiction clinic, that we would ask them to kill their identity. Every day you're going to kill your identity. You've got to find a way to kill that identity. And that is where, get away from the people you've been hanging out with. You get away from the stressors. It is not an accident that most addiction success stories start with an exit from their environment. Because they got to find out, they got to kill that old identity. And it is such a parallel journey for people in a carbohydrate or a metabolic mess, trying to say, well, how do I get that thing where somebody looks and says, you look healthy? How do I get those mitochondria? There is some sabotaging that will go on deep inside your body and your mind, that it takes time. Racing to a 72-hour fast every week is the opposite of a good idea. That's going to push you to a place where your hormones aren't ready for it. Your emotions aren't ready for it. Your family and friends are not ready for that. You have so many places where you're going to fail, that slow it down, find one step, stay there. And then the next step, and the next step.
That's it. Adapt to the stressors. The small little tweaks lead to giant peaks.
Amen.
Dr. Boz, are you, can we go to one more question, or do you have to run? I know we're taking a lot of your time, so I appreciate you going over.
I actually had you booked for 2 hours, so you're good.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. There's a few more from Jay. Let me choose one more, and then I'll get to the rest. I'll answer them. So actually, I'm going to get to Michelle, because Jay, I'll answer your questions after Dr. Boz hops off. So Michelle says, hi, Dr. Boz and Ben. Started listening to your podcast. Ben, I started listening to your podcast with Dr. Sandra Kaufman, who was your guest. I immediately was inspired because I realized my cells were the problem, kidney cancer survival for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
I started Dr. Kaufman's protocol for inflammation. The rest of my lifestyle has not been dialed in as I know it needs to be, in which I'm loving the education you're providing us. Question: would you advise that I continue on the inflammation protocol while doing this challenge? I guess that's more of a question for me. I don't know
what the inflammation protocol is.
Yeah, so Dr. Kaufman wrote a book called The Kaufman Protocol, where she incorporates a lot of like turmeric and resveratrol, these other mitochondrial couplers, right? So what are your thoughts on those ingredients and herbs that help the mitochondrial couple?
Yeah, I get a lot of those questions too. So the first thing I point out is, where are your mitochondria found? They're inside a cell, right?
Yeah.
So in order to get this molecule to the place we're trying to get it to, we have to swallow it. It has to get past the acid setting of your stomach. It has to get absorbed in the first section of your gut. It has to get past the lymphatic system if it's fat. It has to get past the hepatic or liver section if it's if it fits into the portal vein. And then in circulation, it has to get to that tissue, to get to that mitochondria, which isn't easy. It's got to get across the cell border. And then that mitochondria has to be able to receive it. And if it's one of those broken mitochondria with a whole bunch of inflammatory reactive oxygen species coming out of it, it's swimming upstream. So we have lots of evidence that these do make a difference. But I think the greatest difference is delivering a ketone to the inside of a cell, to the organelle that we're trying to get to, which is the mitochondria. So when you practice combing mitochondria or ketones through mitochondria, and you watch to see how that organelle health really improves over 6 weeks, 6 months, it's incredible. I don't care what supplement you're looking at. It's a minor tweak compared to area under the curve where the mitochondria was burning ketones. Yeah. And, I think there's a lot of people that I've had asking for, some of the, the metformins and the, is resveratrol the one that is
berberine?
Yeah. So berberine's another one, but that's a lot like metformin.
Yep.
Resveratrol isn't that the
NMN, resveratrol, turmeric.
I'm just it's right on the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me when you're talking again. So I'm looking at what the mechanism is that it impacts, and it is deep within the cell or the organelle of the mitochondria. And you say, okay, great. That's so amazing that we found this, that we discovered this, and we can make an impact of that.
Melatonin.
Melatonin.
Glutathione. Were you thinking? Okay.
No, it is. It affects histone deacetylase. It's coming. Okay. And it, it's the same thing that a ketogenic stage reverses. Who talks a ton about this is Peter Attia.
Okay.
Anyway, it'll come to me when I just stop trying so hard. The point is, it's a very geeky thing in the depths of the bowels of a biochemistry textbook that only a small number of people really understand. And I have evidence to say that most of us that think we understand it, as soon as you throw one more rule in there, you're like, well, that breaks about 6 of the other ones. So it's not well mapped out, if you ask me. The point I'm making is, even with that, it's cool. A scientist can explain that. How do I get the average person to have impact on that cellular improvement that we know is required to reverse these health problems? And to me, the supplements are few and far between that make anything close to the impact of reduce the insulin. It's not a pill, people. It is shut your mouth. There's only certain hours in the day you should be eating. It should not be after sunset. If you've got a tummy or if you've got insulin resistance and you've been around the sun more than 30 times, period.
So essentially, it's like what you've been saying the whole time today and what you've always been saying, focus on the fundamentals, right? Let's get insulin down, focus on sleep, focus on stress. And then there's a time and place where you could add in these biohacks, these supplements, these things that can help, but you got to first
absolutely right
fix the metabolism first, right? So that's what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. It's like we get excited, and myself personally, like all these shiny object syndrome, but it's like, okay, fundamentals first, strong foundation, like a house. You want to build a house, strong foundation, and then you could build the beautiful kitchen and the beautiful master bedroom, but you have to have the foundation first.
Amen. Yeah. And I really think that it's, like the gal who just said, I'm a few days into this. What I always worry is they get so distracted by, I have to buy all this stuff. I'm like, no, you got to buy less stuff. You got to eat less stuff. And
it's so true. Dr. Pompa says that all the time. It's like so many people think I need to add this and add that, but it's really, you need to subtract. You're saying that too. I agree with you. This has been so good. I know everybody's just loving the conversation. So Dr. Boz, share with the challenge members the best place to find you, your website, all the cool things you're up to.
Great. Well, bozmd.com is our website, and that's where you can find several of the articles I've written, several of the just cliff notes. But you can also find the links to our Tuesday Night Live, which is on YouTube. I do that every Tuesday. And that's where you really find the updates on what I'm doing. I say things on there I'm not supposed to, according to my team. Like, don't tell them that yet. We're not ready. But I also try to put out a couple of good teachable. I'm really trying to focus my efforts inside YouTube because, again, fundamentals, and let's pick one place to be good at. So I've picked YouTube, and really I'm trying to hold on to that algorithm of short, very intense, highly animated teachable moments. So I really appreciate all of those that follow, that watch the commercials, because that's the only way you get paid from people.
That's true.
Yeah, it's not my favorite business model. So there are a lot of things that I'm a practicing internist. So I'm here in Florida. I am new to Florida and trying to find, how do I end my career? How do I do the next 20 years of my career in a way that isn't the same as what I did the first 25 years? So
beautiful.
Pray for that. Wish me luck on that. And you'll find the answer out probably as I do on Tuesday nights.
I love that. So if you're not subscribed to Dr. Boz's YouTube channel, just type in her name, Dr. Boz, on YouTube, subscribe to it. I'm subscribed to your channel. For many, many years, I've been following your work, and it's just really, of course, it's educational and it's scientific, but also like the storytelling, and it's really relatable. So I think it's a combination of so many things that is a result of you growing so fast, and well-deserved. So thank you, Dr. Boz, for being so educational and so brilliant. We really appreciate you going overtime today and just educating us all. I personally learned so much, and I just wanted to say thank you. I've got a lot of vitamin G for you, Dr. Boz.
Well, I actually want to make sure to praise you right back, because I wasn't kidding when I think the world needs more Ben Azadis, that this is not a universe that requires a medical degree to teach this. It requires people who've had boundaries or success and then failures, and then say, well, I could probably teach a few people. I could probably be the example to a few people. And I hope that's their families. But in Ben's case, it really is just his example of saying, yep, I had some setbacks. It sucked. Here's how I'm doing it better. And look at the Pied Piper you've become, that people say, I want to be like Ben. I want to see that. And I'm headed to this medical conference, and I'm a little nervous presenting this poster of how I'm trying to do it differently, because it's hard being the first one out there saying, yes, I ask patients to do that. and really just having people with courage saying, no, when you see what works and you teach it to the people that are looking and hungry, really hungry for an example that says, how do I not keep going to the doctor for more prescriptions or surgical interventions? How do I really live this healthy life? You would put Ben's face in that Sanford algorithm and say, he's youthful, he's full of energy, and he is a motivated, committed leader. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Boz. You're going to do great at the conference. I know it. You're going to crush it. I told you this when I texted you earlier. They're so blessed to have you there. So Do an amazing job. I know you will. I can't wait to share another stage with you, and we'll do some more collaboration. So thank you. You could feel free to sign off, and I'm going to continue the stream here. But we all
good. Good luck with the rest of your launch. You're doing amazing stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Boz. Talk to you soon.